Welcome. It's your boy Ryan. We are here for the antidote. Took last week off because I was at the White Privilege Conference in Hartford, Connecticut. It was a good time. Got to connect with some really amazing people. Got to re-energize. In these crazy times, it's really important that you're with people who give you life, can pour into you, and know what it is that you're feeling, share a similar idea of what the world could be. And so it was really good. It was really good to be there. Shout out to Dr. Eddie Moore. Shout out to all the folks at WPC. I've been going for a long time now, for a long time, and so it's always one of those things that brings me life. Um, so yeah, if you're joining us on TikTok, go ahead and like this live. Share it, invite friends. If you're joining us on YouTube, appreciate it. Please subscribe. Please like it. Tell your friends about it. I'm really trying to take seriously building this channel, taking it a little bit more seriously, I should say. This is the antidote. This is where we analyze current events in the world, the most pressing issues, the most divisive conversations, and we look for what would it mean to heal from that. How do we approach this from a place that brings us closer together? I really believe that we're gonna stand on integrity. We're gonna stand on values, but I do believe we gotta find time to connect and build together. What's up, Kim? Thanks for being here. Feel free like this. What up, Sonia? Come on through. This is the antidote. I am Ryan Burden. Join us. We're gonna give it. So some folks are like, "How come you always just talk in the beginning?" I didn't realize this at first, but sometimes it takes a little bit for the word to get out that you're going live. People will notify you, and so we'd like to have people come into the space. Today we're gonna talk about Signalgate and white male mediocrity specifically, because that is killing us. And we're gonna connect some dots, and then we're gonna talk about how do we come together. Because there's actually a lot of evidence of us coming together, and I know some folks watching this are probably going to be irritated, but I'm going to talk about Bernie Sanders and AOC and what we can learn and what we can glean from them setting records and having people come through to see them in red districts. What does it mean? What does the Wisconsin election mean? What do the Florida elections mean? We're going to talk about all of that. What's up, Shelly? Dan Millen, how you doing? Bert, how you doing? Thank y'all for being here. Shout out the city. Go ahead and jump in the chat. Shout out the city that you're in. If you're alive, thank you for being here. If you're watching, please join the comments. If you're watching after, this is always up for my TikTok folks. This always goes up on the YouTube page immediately following the show. So you can catch it anytime. You can catch past episodes. Please do that. Like I said, we're really trying to build this channel. All right, y'all. So let's get into it. As always, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll have some time to discuss. And thank you for being here. Like this, share this, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. It costs you nothing to hit the subscribe button. I also want to shout out my boy, Chris Crass. Some of you might know who Chris Crass is. He's a longtime organizer, organizes white men. But he had a group together at the Highlander Center a couple weekends ago, and I really wish I could have been there. My daughter was in town though, so I couldn't head up to Tennessee. But the Highlander Center is an amazing place, historical place. If you know anything about civil rights and the movement for justice, the Highlander Center is an epicenter for that. So shout out to Chris getting white men up there doing that. We're going to talk today about why it's so important that white men seize this moment. Because we got goofballs like Pete Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Russell Voigt, all these people who are front and center. Donald Trump certainly among them, right? Marco Rubio, although he's white passing. We'll talk about, that's an expansion of whiteness. We can talk about, we're going to talk about why white men particularly need to seize this moment, right? And Signalgate gives us the perfect example of just how dangerous white mediocrity is, white male mediocrity specifically. Okay. And so I don't want to get into too much of what Signalgate is. Everybody's probably heard of it. If you're watching this, you've definitely heard of it. You know that Hegseth, Walls, and that the administration, Tulsi Gabbard, they all were on a Signal group chat. Now, if you're an organizer, you know about Signal because we use that, and we thought we were the shit using Signal because we thought that the police couldn't hack it and stuff. But I was a part of a group that we didn't trust Signal, and got together, and we showed up at Mayor Betsy Hodges' house in Minneapolis when the police were shooting rubber bullets at babies before George Floyd. It was during the Jamar Clark takeover of the 4th precinct on the north side, and we went to Mayor Hodges' house, and we were greeted by police. Hold on, I'm getting some chats on the YouTube. Can you hear? Saying you can't hear. Is there problems? Hold on. Crystal, what's up? On TikTok, can you hear? Let's go. Y'all can hear me over there? My point is that, okay, it's just low. Let me see if I can do anything about that, Anthony. I don't think so. I think that might be a computer thing, bro. I think that might be a computer thing. Let me go like this. Take a look. Okay. I might be able to do one thing with you. Right here. Here we go. There we go. Turned up in the monitors. Turn me up in the monitors. You know, little hip hop head. You got to make sure you do that. You got to make sure you tell them that. Okay, we're back. Let me bring up that YouTube chat. There we go. Come on now, bam. I don't know why that's all right. There we go. Why is it doing that? That's gonna bother me quite a bit. There we go. Okay. Y'all get the camera. Y'all got the cell phone camera. I'm sorry about that. Especially if you're watching after, because I don't edit these. You get the real raw, rugged. But if you subscribe, maybe we can monetize the channel and I can get some better production. So we're talking about Signalgate. What's up, Blake? What's up, Crystal? Make sure you like this, please. Like it, share, invite your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. It really does help. It's free to do. So Signalgate, they texting war plans. I was saying we didn't even use Signal. We knew that shit wasn't really encoded even during then, and the police still got us. So the feds was definitely on that. To believe that group chat was private is to be foolish. But more than that, it's wild that happened. And we're not going to debate that. I'm not here to talk about that. There's lots of places that can talk about, was it classified, wasn't it? I think everybody in their right mind knows that was wild, that was inappropriate. Had Obama or any Democratic administration done something similar, the right would have been up in arms. And I am no Democrat. I am no Democrat, so this ain't caping for Democrats or nothing like that. It's just telling the truth, right? That wouldn't have flew from the right, and you would have seen all these military bros, white men like Pete Hegseth, like Donald Trump, like Walls, like all the people, right, who are defending it, being like, yeah, this is crazy, they're unserious, look at these snowflakes, all of that, right? Right, Anthony saying, if you're in the chat, you see that somebody in the military ain't never seen nothing like that. And so we know that this is not okay. But I want to contextualize this. What's up, Ali? I want to contextualize this because it is impossible to understand this outside of understanding whiteness, right? White masculinity, particularly what Carol Anderson called white rage. We are in the throes of that. This is really about whiteness. And so before people are like, oh, you're talking identity politics, Ryan, why are you talking like that? I think it's important that we talk about and remind ourselves the role of identity politics in the creation of the country, right? identity politics is fundamental to America's origin story. Identity politics is what created the elite and the powerful in America. Of course, the identity politics that I'm talking about are the ways that white men insulated themselves, exploited land, exploited labor, exploited all kinds of things, brutalized indigenous people, sold, kidnapped, and murdered, and in all kinds of other ways committed treachery against our souls through the institution of enslavement. And so this is really, we got to understand identity politics as that. And so when we talk about identity politics today, we are saying we need to address the identity politics at the heart of American society, right? And we got to be really clear. We got to take our time to understand that, because we can't get to economic justice. We can't get to any of these other types of justices if we don't name how identity politics has shaped the inequities that we are currently living through, right? And so all these white men, though, had something like this happen, certainly would have been up in arms. And what they would have done, because we know a couple episodes of this back, we talked about how Trump was firing the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all that because of DEI hires. And it was a big talking point in the campaign that DEI was lowering the bar, was lowering the expectations. Elon Musk talks about that all the time, right? And so how do we understand this moment? How should we understand Signalgate in that context? What we can understand is that white men are not serious about merit by and large, right? Particularly wealthy white men are not serious about merit. None of what they were talking about was that genuine, was that in good faith. They don't actually care about those things, right? What they cared about was protecting white masculinity, was creating space for white people, white men particularly, to have the easiest route, not to compete, not to be excellent, not to be great, not steel sharpen steel or any of those other things that folks were talking about. Is really just about making sure that they get theirs. There's really no other way to understand this, right? And the irony is so deep because in the midst of Signalgate, right, Trump directs J.D. Vance to basically take a sledgehammer to the Smithsonian, named specifically the African American History Museum. Right, he says we need to rid the Smithsonian of all things that are racially divisive or talk about America as inherently unequal. And so this is where the educator in me steps in, right? Because it's scary to me when we try to act like things that happened didn't happen, right? And again, I want to point out the hypocrisy and the irony and the distortions that whiteness puts us through, because these are the very same people who threw temper tantrums and hissy fits when Confederate monuments were taken down or places and landmarks that were named after Confederate generals were renamed, right? And there's two ways to understand this. We can understand that. And they did this, of course, under the guise of this is American history. It might be ugly history, but it's American history, so we should keep it, right? And I'm actually not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to keeping American history. Let's talk about Robert E. Lee. Let's talk about these cats. Let's talk about Lincoln. I'll tell the truth about Lincoln. Lincoln wasn't an anti-racist. Lincoln wasn't concerned about racial justice. There are people that we could talk about. If you've heard me speak, you know I spend a lot of time talking about my own anti-racist white heroes, the people who chose something else besides whiteness. But we can understand this as just ignorance and emotional reactions, because white men are largely very emotionally immature, have very little emotional intelligence. And so can't really deal with things like that. That's certainly true for some people. I don't know if that's true for the people in the administration. I don't know if Stephen Miller, well, I know he doesn't have any emotional intelligence or anything like that, but I don't think that it's that um, simple. Well, I shouldn't say simple. I don't think that's the motivating factor. I think it's the other way we can understand this. We can understand this as straight up white Christian nationalism. And I think that that's the more appropriate, that's the more likely way to discuss what is happening and to understand it, right? And it's important that we have these understandings because it's going to help us when we talk about how do we come together, right? So I think for some folks, I think for the Stephen Millers of the world, for the Russell Voights of the world, for the Pete Hegseths of the world, for the Elon Musks of the world, and for the Donald Trumps of the world, this is really about elevating white men, making excuses for white men, because they believe in their hearts that white men are better, are superior. I think that they believe that white men's role is to conquer. I think they're like we can. I don't want to get into too much about how we heal from that right now, but I think that that's that. I don't think that that's the case for everybody though, right? Which is where I want to enter the conversation, because I think there's a lot of folks who see Signalgate or who are starting to see these contradictions of what you've said versus what you're doing and the double standards and all that. And I think they're starting to understand that in terms of double standards, maybe not quite giving it that racial language, but I think it's important that we give it that racial language. This is a product of whiteness. This is a product of whiteness. What's up, Susie? What's up, TikTok folks? If you could like this live, that would be fantastic. Invite your friends. We're talking about white male mediocrity, and we're gonna talk about all kinds of stuff tonight. If you're on YouTube, thanks for being here. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We appreciate it. Yeah, so we can understand this in those two ways, right? And we can understand all of what's happening of the identity politics of the Trump administration. We should understand the whole mantra, "Make America Great Again," as a manifestation of identity politics, the specific identity politics that created the country, the elevation of white men artificially. That is what the goal of this administration is. They don't have any respect for the Constitution. They don't care about people's rights. They don't care about whether you're a criminal or not, right? As we can see, we know that the administration is deporting fathers, for example, we were just hearing about a mother and her 3 daughters that were swooped up in upstate New York, shipped to a private prison in Texas, in an ICE facility there. We could talk about Mahmoud Khalil, right? And him being taken from New York City to a private prison in Louisiana. All of these things were sold to us writ large, right? The society. Were sold to us as common sense. We care about society. These people are bad for the common good, right? And because of whiteness, so many people just believed that, because it's easy to believe that, right? And now what we're seeing, especially with the tariffs, and we're seeing the violence of these policies, and you're seeing the brutality of whiteness. My hope is that folks come to the table and say, you know what, what is the root of this? What is the root? Why are we so callous? Why does Elon Musk say that empathy is a disease of Western civilization? Right? Like, he called the Wisconsin election an election that will dictate the fate of humanity in Western society, right? He believes Western society is built for and by white people, white men particularly, right? That is fundamentally what he believes. There's a really, really great book by Charles Mills called The Racial Contract, which makes this very, 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 very clear, painfully clear, unfortunately. But it's important that we understand this administration in that way, because that allows us to then move forward, right? And this is the antidote. So we're going to talk about how we move forward. So when we understand that there are some people who are just like, oh, I didn't realize that this was what it was going to be. I didn't realize this was tied to whiteness in this way. And they just don't have the framework in place. And then there are people who are choosing this. I call them the ops, right? So we want to talk to the people who might not know about the frame, right? They're not aware of their own socialization. We want to make these connections very, very clear to them, right? We want to be able to ask the question, how do you feel about citizens being deported to El Salvador to go to prison, to be held in prison? And there are citizens that's happening to. How do you feel about, Columbia University being held hostage by the executive branch of the government? These are institutions of critical thought. How do we feel about them capitulating to what's happening in the administration, right? To criminalizing and having a increased police presence, criminalizing student voice, placing whole departments on external receivership. All of these things are violations that if they were happening in other countries, we would be outraged about. We would be absolutely outraged about. And so I think it's important that we connect these to a worldview. And that worldview is whiteness, right? That worldview is whiteness. And I think I promised that I was going to get to the whole Bernie Sanders AOC question of this. Now, I'm somebody who thought that Bernie Sanders was going to win the nomination in 2016 over Clinton. I felt like the Democratic Party undercut and sabotaged him. So I want to be transparent about where I'm at. I am not a Democrat, though, right? So I'm not a Democrat. I didn't appreciate that he ran as a Democrat. I got why he did it, but whatever. But I want to talk about there's a part in the whole Bernie movement, AOC movement, that I think he misses, or doesn't. I've heard him speak to it a couple times, but it's not front and center enough, and I think it keeps a really important segment of the coalition out, and that's black folks, and that's folks interested in racial justice. I don't think that Bernie Sanders and a lot of his supporters, particularly his male supporters, name the role of identity politics in creating the situation that they're the problem that they're presenting a solution to. They have an economic populist message, which I appreciate, right? I'm definitely a socialist, and so I appreciate the message. I think it makes sense. It clearly makes sense and resonates with thousands and thousands and thousands, if not millions, of people across the country. It clearly makes sense and it resonates. And if we don't name the way that whiteness works to fracture that coalition, if we don't do the work that Miles Horton did at the Highlander Center, again, shout out to Chris Crass and folks there organizing. If we don't name that, that movement will not be as strong as it needs to be, right? We have to be able to name the way that this is all about getting to the bag, right? Whiteness's purpose was to allow certain folks to get to the bag, mediocre folks to get to the bag. That's why they did that, right? That whiteness comes about in response to Bacon's Rebellion, where working people across what we would now call race, because there was no such thing as race at that time, not as we know it today. They use that to divide and conquer. And if we don't address that divide, then we're susceptible to being conquered still. And so I want to make sure that we're naming that. And while it's very inspiring to see Sanders and AOC in Republican districts and drawing the way that they are, right? I think it demonstrates the ineptitude of the Democratic Party and the absurdity of their campaign this last time around. And we need to be able to name that because I feel like that's a fissure that could be exploited, right? So I wanted to say that. I wanted to talk about Signalgate as a demonstration of white male mediocrity. And I want to make sure that we're naming that. How is that white male mediocrity, right? Like, and I don't think we need to, I think that that's fairly obvious, right? And it's not the first time. Pete Hegseth is a known alcoholic, sexual deviant, has had problems in that way, and he still got confirmed. Now it required JD Vance to vote for him, right? But he still got confirmed. So, yeah. I also want to say I want to move on from this story. I want to talk a little bit about Cory Booker and his speech on the Senate floor. But first, I want to take some questions, right? So again, if you're watching on TikTok, thank you for being here. Hit like, share this, invite your friends. Hop on over to the YouTube and subscribe to the channel there. Hit the like button there. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like, please. Share with your people. Okay. We got some questions over here. What are your thoughts on the police, and is there such thing as a good cop? I don't know that I accept the premise of that question. I don't know if I accept the premise of that question. What do I mean by that? I think the institution of policing is set up to protect wealth, and is fundamentally flawed. I think if it wasn't, we would see CEOs be held accountable. We would see bankers be held accountable. I think we would see corporations be held accountable for the violence that they cause in our communities, for the harm that they cause in our communities. Police are set up to protect property and to protect a system of criminalization. And that system of criminalization is purposefully muddied. I'll say muddied. It's purposefully meant to think that that's an ethical thing, right? That all crime is immoral and unethical and therefore illegal, and anything that's illegal is therefore unethical and immoral, and that's just not true. And so I think that when you're set up to operate within that system, you are going to cause harm because that system causes harm. It was meant to cause harm. It will always cause harm. Do I think that there are good individuals who enter that profession with the intent to not cause harm or to mitigate harm? Very specific harms. Oftentimes you'll hear like, I want to stop sexual assaults. I want to stop rapists. I want to stop murderers, drug dealers, because they have some real close, intimate connection to that. Yeah, I think that that's true. Do I hate all police officers as individuals? No. Do I despise the system of policing? Yes. I'm an abolitionist, which is again why I'm not thrilled that Derek Chauvin's in prison, for example. I don't think that that's the appropriate spot. I don't believe in prisons. I think that there are better ways to build community. Another one. Do you think that comes from the election? Yeah, I touched on that. I think this is fundamentally about the fear that Obama's election and presidency had in segments of the right. Rib, what's up? John Brown, gotta love that. It's not whiteness, it's Protestant Anglo-Saxonist. Which is whiteness, my dude. Peep the case law. That worldview, the WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, codifies into whiteness. As soon as people begin to assimilate into that way of being, they legally become white. They can then enjoy the privileges of the mainstream economy. I appreciate how you're showing up, though, Rib. Maybe you're moving a little bit, huh? Appreciate that, buddy. Thanks for being here. Normally you come in and troll, but you're actually engaged. So let's get back to it. Let's talk about Cory Booker. Yo, I've never been so frustrated. I don't think I've ever been so frustrated. No, that's not true. I've been more frustrated. But it was very frustrating to me to see all the people giving that man so much love and so much props, right? One, because he didn't do nothing. And I don't mean that as in like you fit, like obviously you did something, you were speaking for that long, but there was no bill that you were filibustering. There was no order of business that you were interrupting. It was performance only for performance sake, right? I think there's a role of performance. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a role for theater. I think there's a role for spectacle in this movement. It's needed to draw attention, but it should be connected to something. And the other thing is, it's not like you didn't have the chance a couple weeks ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, to do the same damn thing and actually stop harm from happening. You could have done that when Hegseth was being nominated. You could have done that when Linda McMahon was being nominated. You could have done that when Gabbard was being nominated. You could have done that when Rubio was being nominated. Somebody could have done something during those times, right? And they chose not to. And then to stand up when literally nothing is on the line and have people respond to that in a way that valorizes it, that makes it seem like you did something courageous, just doesn't sit well with me. And I want to be clear, I've seen on this app, on TikTok and on YouTube and on TV, people saying things like, well, you do something. You perform for 25 hours. You perform for a day straight. You know what? I have, motherfucker. It's called work. My people have worked 2-3 jobs. You know how many 24-hour shifts my pops put in? Do you know how many peoples out here are working 2, 3, 4 jobs? Do you know how many hours that the snow removal is working on? Do you know how many hours the single mom is putting in at probably 2, 3, 4 jobs? Miss me with you can't do anything for 24 hours. My children stay up for 24 hours. That's not a feat. That's not a feat. All right? And so again, I think this is how we lose the thing. We lose each other. We lose relationships. We lose community because ain't nobody thinking about that. That's not a feat. How many people watching right now? How many of y'all on TikTok? How many of y'all on YouTube know somebody who done put in an overnight, who done put in a 24-hour shift, worked 2-3 jobs for 24 hours straight, maybe 36 hours straight? Goddamn, man, like that ain't, you don't get trophies for that, especially when your ass gets to cash a 6-figure check and go home and do nothing after. You don't even have to experience the majority of the harm for the things that you gave a pass to a couple weeks ago, a few months ago. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. There's a whole ass genocide happening, and this dude decided to wait until literally nothing was on the line to talk for 25 hours. That shit's crazy. It's a no-go. We're not, I will not. I can't go for it. I'm here for theater. I've been a part of theater, right? I've been a part of theater, but it's always been connected to something. And we can't do the not connected to anything. And that's what Democrats do best. Kente cloth wearing, kneeling, goofy ass people who don't take themselves seriously, and then we all pay the price. We all pay the price because then nobody do shit when Trump was appointing these people. Then nobody do shit when these tariffs hit. And now we're all literally going to be paying the price. I just heard before I jumped on here, something like $2.5 trillion disappeared in the stock market today. $2.5 trillion disappeared, y'all. Where do they do that at? This is how backwards our economy is. Where? How does that go somewhere? And how do we act like that ain't people starving? How do we act like that ain't connected to health? How do we act like that doesn't have outcomes in real life? I don't get it. I'm never going to get it. I don't rock with it. And so, yeah, cool. You stayed up all night and talked, my guy. Do something different. That's how I feel about that. Got me riled up over here. Yeah, so said some things. If you got some questions, let me know. We're about that time, y'all. It's about that time. We're taking questions. If you're on TikTok, thank you for the likes. Please like and invite your friends. I if you're on TikTok and you got a question, y'all, you can join. I have you join. It's wild out here. The whole AL Central is 2-4, by the way. I don't just talk about politics. That's crazy. The entire AL Central is 2-4 right now. I'm a Twins fan. Also, go Wolves. Let's get out the play-in. I'm here for that. That Denver Minnesota game the other day was crazy. Jokic is wild. He's amazing. All right, it don't look like we're getting any questions, and y'all might have just talked my shit, and now we get up out of here, huh? Looks like it. I'm gonna wait another minute. We'll give it 2 minutes. Who got a question? All right, like I said, you can find this whole live over on the YouTube. This is the Antidote. We break down current events and look for ways that we can come together, what we need to do. We tell the truth. That's the real antidote. We tell the truth and offer ways to fight back against the powerful elite that want to keep us divided. Join us every Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Mountain, and 5 o'clock Pacific time. We got folks joining us all over the country. We're going to get international one of these days. If you're watching this, like, subscribe. If you're watching it live, thank you for being here. You can catch the replay over on YouTube. It's there all the time. Make sure you subscribe to that channel as well. Hold on, we got Rib Rascal jumping in. What's your opinion of Jasmine Ratchet? So I'm not gonna. That's a disrespectful ass question. If you want to talk about that, jump on here. I've invited you several times, Rib, and you punk out. So we ain't gonna feed the trolls right now. That's disrespectful as hell. So that's my opinion. Makes me feel like you're a small, insignificant man that needs to try to talk shit to feel better about yourself. You'll be all right, though. Go get a hug from your mom, if she'll still hug you. Peace, y'all.